Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning. Welcome to Encounter. My name is Joe Sellepack. I'm the Executive Director at the Broome County Council of Churches and your host today for Encounter. Domestic violence. This is October, and October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's a very prevalent aspect of life in our area, actually. It's sadly so. 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 5 men have experienced some form of intimate partner abuse, and lots of children have been abused too, and we've had lots of domestic violence incidences since I've been here in the last 10 years. It's sadly a very prevalent part of our community. How prevalent is it in Binghamton?
Well, I think it's as prevalent here as it is in many communities where it's just an ongoing problem. We see it in so many families in so many different walks of life, or social, economic, religious, whatever boundaries you might want to sort of artificially recognize. Domestic violence is very common, unfortunately.
And the religious aspect of it, I've always found to be interesting too, is that many women specifically, or men, tend to feel as if religion plays into abuse. So they stick with someone because the Bible says this, or they stick with someone because they feel like, marriage is for life, and in spite of the fact that they're being
right.
Being abused.
Their faith informs how they live their life, and it's very hard sometimes to for people to undo that and to say, well, does God really intend me to live this kind of life? Right. Is this really honoring marriage, and is this really honoring my faith? And those are hard questions for people.
Yeah, because love, honor, and cherish, something that we talk about in the marriage vows. I mean, you're not being loved, you're not being honored, you're not being cherished.
Correct. Yeah.
When you're in the midst of those kinds of situations.
Absolutely.
Well, my guest today is Rebecca Allerton.
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's very nice to have you on. We know each other from the Family Violence Prevention Council, but yes. Rebecca Allerton is the Executive Director at RISE, formerly known as the SOS Shelter. So for the last 3 years, I guess,
we changed the name about 3 years ago, really because we wanted to kind of acknowledge and honor, if you will, what we see so many of our clients get to do, which is indeed RISE, which is indeed be who they are, which is not a victim, not somebody's punching bag or somebody's object of belittlement, but to be who they are and to be doing with their lives what they wish to do. And that is very cool.
And you get to be a part of that. You get to help.
To be a part of that, which is for me, has been always a great honor, if you will, a great, wow, the trust that when people come to us, the trust that they have in us is very, just very moving, very important when somebody trusts you that way. So,
yeah, it would seem to me like, especially if you're feeling domestic violence tends to isolate people.
Absolutely.
It makes them feel like they're alone, and they're not able to connect with others. They hide it, or so it would the issue of trust would be huge in that.
Sure,
right?
Sure. Yeah, it's huge, and a lot of times that isolation that you're talking about is because the perpetrator does not want the victimized person in the relationship to be seeing friends, to be seeing family, and will often be pretty alienating to those people, and that will isolate the victim. And so that's very hard. And who do you trust so that it's not going to get worse? It's not going to be exacerbated by something that I might do, supposedly. So yeah, victims are very isolated, and trust is a huge issue. So somebody comes to us and trusts us, that's pretty important to us.
Yeah, and for them to actually get to the point where they make that phone call, generally, that's a element of desperation. Like there's no other
Well,
recourse?
it can't be an element of desperation. It can also be an element of hope.
Of hope.
To say,
right.
I'm gonna reach out, and people can call our hotline, which is 754-4340, and just talk to somebody. They don't have to tell us, my name is this or what, but just call and be touch and base with someone, reach out a little bit. So that's one of the things that we're there for 24 hours a day, is having that staffed hotline.
Now, often, we know about women in domestic violence situations because often that becomes visible. They're beaten, or there's something like that goes on. They have bruises, that kind of thing. But what other types of abuse are there?
Well, there's certainly psychological abuse, name calling, putting somebody down, belittling someone. Economic abuse is very common. Joe, I'm going to make all the money, but I'm going to give it to you, and you're going to control it, but you're going to put all the bills in my name.
Right.
Very common financial abuse that we see, and it's a way to control somebody and keep somebody in their place. How are you going to leave if you have all these bills in your name and they're not being paid, for example. Certainly sexual abuse is very common, and probably one of the things that people are much more hesitant to speak about. Threats against the family, against the children, or turning children against you. Oh, your mother is, stupid, your mother is this, that, whatever. Or if you leave, I'll make sure you don't get the kids.
Right.
So lots of things that really, when people say, well, I don't know why somebody doesn't just leave. Well, there are lots of reasons, those being a few, and understanding that leaving doesn't necessarily end everything, solve everything right at that moment. There are still issues that people need to address, and we're there for that too. People tend to think of RISE as the shelter component, but we have a whole advocacy department that works with people who are in the shelter, not in the shelter, have been in the shelter, but again, continue to need some kind of legal assistance with other resources in the community. So we do a lot of that's kind of not seen so much, helping people with family court issues, so on and so forth. I could.
Right. Well, please, you can say as much about RISE as you want. I mean, this is an important organization in our community. It's,
thank you.
Being able to have that 800 number that you can call is an important thing too. So, that hotline number is really important for us to remember.
And again, locally, it's 754-4340. For people who are out of the area, need to call us. It's 877-754-4340. And I think we've gotten so used to there not being long distance charges like there used to be, but people can certainly call us on either of those numbers 24 hours a day.
And it would be for anyone who's experiencing abuse. So
absolutely,
it's not just women, it's men, it's gay people, it's lesbians, it's transgender
people. And it can also be, we tend to use all these terms, intimate partner violence or whatever, but it could be, let's say, an elderly parent who is living with an adult child who is being abusive.
That's one of the places where economic abuse often will take a place.
So often, absolutely.
Situation.
Yeah, so a lot of different kinds of relationships, maybe someone who is living with a sibling who is abusive, someone who is living with a boyfriend, living with a girlfriend, really is to whom are you intimately connected in your life? Of course, not necessarily sexually, but intimate a part of your life that is being abusive to you is really, it's a broad range.
So are there some symptoms? So if one of your friends is being abused inside of a relationship, are there ways of being able to tell?
Well, that's tough. I would say if somebody who has been previously quite outgoing and gregarious and is suddenly again isolated, that person isn't allowed to go out anymore. Sort of the demeanor changes. It might be one of the things you want to think about and kind of you okay? Is everything okay at home? To let that person know you're there, you're open to speaking with them and to offer what you can, which for most of us, it's at least a hug and a listening ear.
Right. And what kind of advice might you be able to give to a person that is being abused?
I think resources are critical, that it sort of does open a door. You don't have to go through this alone. There are things you can do, and there are people who can help you who do have some expertise in this area. And as your friend, I'll stand by you.
Right.
But friends don't necessarily have that same expertise, but I'm your friend.
And then if, oftentimes children are one of the places where the abuse that within the family kind of exemplifies itself. So if you have a child in Sunday school, for instance, who might be coming in and they may be withdrawn, they may be having some, maybe even acting out in certain ways. What would a Sunday school teacher do?
I think sort of the same thing. Be ready to listen. Be ready maybe to talk to a parent, but very carefully. Just be there for that child. Like it's so important. I mean, it sounds so simple in some ways, but it's so important to just be there for someone, to be open to what you might hear, not to act as though you're shocked by what you might hear, if indeed that opens up, just to simply be there and to be familiar with some of the resources in the community. And
now, would they be able to find that on your website at Rise?
Yeah, absolutely. There's descriptions of different services that we provide, and phone numbers and links to some other organizations. So absolutely, and it's rise ny.org is our website.
Now, men tend not to want to report domestic violence, but women too. I mean, why is it so hard for people to
I think
make that leap?
No matter what your gender is, your gender identification, your relationship, it's really hard to say this person who is supposed to love me is being abusive to me. How's the rest of the world going to view me when this person who I think loves me is treating me this way? So it's very tough. For some people, it can be made more difficult by feeling perhaps more shame, or feeling, in some instances, like we were talking about earlier, the disapproval of religion, or disapproval of family. Shh, keep this quiet.
Right.
This is, you don't bring any shame on us, and guilt. What am I doing wrong? Because that's always part of it. Well, if you wouldn't,
then I
wouldn't. Blaming the victim. So lots of reasons why people don't come forward with it. I think we've made some progress in that in the last 30 years through a lot through organizations like Rise, through people who recognize this is an issue. This is not okay. This is not the society we want to build.
Right. It seems too that by empowering women, and women entering the workplace and having some economic